It was supposed to be just another day in Washington, D.C. Politicians, advisors, and press members carried on with their routines, unaware that something unexpected was about to unfold inside the White House. At first, no one noticed. A black SUV pulled up to the executive entrance, nothing out of the ordinary. But when the door opened, and Travis Scott stepped out, wearing a crisp designer suit, something he rarely did, the energy in the air shifted. Reporters stationed nearby immediately turned their cameras toward him. What was he doing here? A casual visit? A private meeting? Or was this something far bigger? No official announcement had been made. No agenda listed his name. Yet, here he was, walking confidently through the White House gates. Then, things got even stranger. Inside the press room, sources whispered that Scott wasn't just here for a meeting. He was here to sign something. Not just any document, but a highly confidential file, prepared for his signature. A leaked photo surfaced moments later, showing a large folder with an official government seal. The title was blurred, but some letters were partially visible. Cultural Reform Initiative, Phase 1. The internet exploded. What was this initiative? Why was Travis Scott involved? Was he negotiating something with the government? Or was this a purely symbolic act? And then, something even more bizarre happened. As reporters tried to dig deeper, the White House abruptly cut the press feed. Live coverage of the event was disabled. Social media posts related to Scott's visit began disappearing. Even mainstream news outlets, which had initially reported on his unexpected arrival, suddenly went silent. Something was being hidden. But what? And more importantly, why? People started searching for answers. Some speculated that Travis Scott was working with the government on a music or cultural initiative aimed at shaping the entertainment industry. Others believed this was a move to influence younger generations through major artists. But a much darker theory soon emerged. Some believed that the document he signed was more than just a proposal, that it wasn't about music at all, that whatever was inside that folder wasn't just paperwork, it was the beginning of something far bigger. And Travis Scott? He was now a part of it. But what exactly had he just signed? And why did the government not want anyone to know? The truth was out there, and those who looked closer were about to uncover something no one was supposed to see. The silence that followed Travis Scott's visit to the White House was deafening. The press had been cut off, journalists suddenly lost access, and online discussions about the event began vanishing mysteriously. But the real mystery wasn't just in what had happened, it was in what no one was saying. Travis Scott had entered the White House, signed an official government document, and left without making a statement. No social media post. No interviews. Nothing. And when people started asking questions, the answers never came. Then, a new detail surfaced. Someone inside the White House, an anonymous source, leaked information about what had happened behind closed doors that day. And if what they claimed was true, this wasn't just about music. It wasn't just a cultural initiative. It was something much, much bigger. The anonymous source claimed that the document Travis Scott signed wasn't just a simple government initiative. It was a part of a classified multi-phase strategy, referred to in internal files as Cultural Reform Initiative, Phase 1. And here's where things get strange. This initiative was reportedly designed to reshape the entertainment industry, but not in the way people thought. Officially, it was about modernizing cultural influence, fostering unity, and enhancing the global impact of American entertainment. But unofficially, it was something far more strategic. According to the leaked file, the government had been in discussions with select high-profile artists, industry leaders, and media executives for months. The goal? To subtly shift the direction of mainstream culture. Not just through music, not just through entertainment, but through a carefully orchestrated movement that would reshape public perception, social trends, and influence generations. And Travis Scott? He had just signed the first step of that plan. But what exactly was his role? And why was everything so secretive? Immediately after the leak, something unusual happened. News articles covering the event started disappearing. Online discussions were heavily moderated. Even Travis Scott's official accounts went silent. For an artist known for his massive social media presence, the lack of any response felt calculated. Why wasn't he addressing it? Was he being told not to? Or was he choosing to remain silent? And then, something even more bizarre surfaced. A single photo, leaked from inside the White House, showed a second document that had been present during the signing. The document wasn't just a cultural initiative. It contained references to something called Phase 2, Strategic Influence Program. What was Phase 2? Was Travis Scott's signature just the beginning? And more importantly, How many others had already signed before him? The deeper people dug, the more questions emerged. And that's when the second leak happened. This time, it wasn't just about Travis Scott. It was about something much bigger. Something that involved other artists, actors, and influencers. Because according to the files, he wasn't the only one involved. But before anyone could connect the dots, all traces of the leak began disappearing. Websites removed articles. Social media scrubbed posts. Journalists who had been investigating suddenly stopped reporting on it. The story was being buried. And yet, one thing was certain. The plan was already in motion. Travis Scott had signed something that wasn't meant to be public. And whatever Phase 2 was, it was already happening. The silence surrounding Travis Scott's White House visit was becoming impossible to ignore. The internet had erupted with speculation, but every time people tried to dig deeper, the information vanished. News articles were quietly pulled, online discussions were being deleted in real time, and independent journalists who attempted to investigate the story suddenly stopped reporting on it. Something was happening behind the scenes. Something big. And then, an even stranger development occurred. A well-known industry insider, someone with connections to major record labels and government-affiliated projects, broke their silence anonymously. They didn't release a full statement, no long-winded explanation, just a few cryptic messages on an obscure forum, one that was quickly taken down after the posts appeared. But before it was erased, users managed to save the messages. You're looking in the wrong places. This isn't about a single contract. It's about control. The cultural shift isn't coming. It's already here. What did that mean? Another message followed. Scott isn't the only one. Others have signed. Others will sign. The plan is bigger than music. The White House isn't just running politics anymore. Then, a final warning. If you knew what Phase 2 really was, you wouldn't sleep tonight. And then, just like that, the account was wiped. At first, many dismissed it as another conspiracy theory, someone playing into the hype for attention. But then, within hours, something happened that made people question everything. Travis Scott's social media accounts briefly went offline. For exactly 7 minutes, his Twitter, Instagram, and official website displayed error messages. No explanation. No announcement. Just an eerie silence. When the accounts returned, fans noticed something odd. Several of his past tweets were missing. Specifically, any post mentioning government initiatives, cultural influence, or even the White House visit itself. It was as if someone was actively erasing the digital footprint of the event. Meanwhile, the leaked document continued to fuel speculation. A clearer image of the file surfaced, showing not just Scott's signature, but a list of other names underneath. Some of the names were blurred, but one detail stood out. The number of signatories was far greater than anyone expected. This wasn't about one artist. This was about a coordinated effort, involving people from music, film, and digital media. The implications were staggering. If this was just Phase 1, what would Phase 2 bring? And more importantly, who was really behind it? Because one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just about Travis Scott anymore. It was about reshaping reality itself. The deeper people dug, the more obvious it became. This wasn't just a one-time event. Whatever Travis Scott had signed inside the White House was part of something far bigger, something deliberately hidden from the public eye. The leaked document, though still heavily censored, confirmed the existence of multiple signatories. Some names were blurred, others completely redacted, but one thing stood out. Scott was not the first to sign, nor would he be the last. The real question was, who else was involved? And then, just when people started piecing things together, something terrifying happened. A second signature leak appeared online. Unlike the first, this one wasn't a blurry screenshot. It was a high-resolution document, complete with signatures from multiple high-profile figures in entertainment, tech, and media. Among them, an A-list actor, a globally recognized pop star, and a CEO from one of the largest social media platforms. Their names were visible for less than an hour before the leak vanished. Websites hosting the file were shut down, and users who had shared it had their accounts suspended. But it was too late. People had seen the proof. This wasn't just about Travis Scott. This was about a systemic shift, carefully planned and executed at the highest levels of influence. And then, more accounts started disappearing. Not just random internet users, but journalists, independent researchers, even influencers who had discussed the event. Suddenly, articles that had been archived were showing 404 errors. YouTube videos covering the story were being demonetized, then deleted. Even mainstream news outlets, those that had initially reported Scott's White House visit, went completely silent. Why? Why was this story being erased from history? And then, as if to confirm people's worst fears, a former industry executive came forward anonymously, posting on a private forum. This goes deeper than you think. You're not supposed to know. He wasn't supposed to sign publicly. The only mistake they made was letting you see it. The post was live for 9 minutes before it, too, was deleted. And now, a new question emerged. Had Travis Scott unknowingly exposed something he wasn't supposed to? And if so, what would happen next? The more people tried to uncover the truth, the faster the information disappeared. Websites that had once hosted leaked documents were suddenly unavailable. News reports that had covered Travis Scott's White House visit no longer existed. Even cached versions of articles, historically difficult to erase, were gone. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was erasure. At first, people assumed it was a coincidence. Maybe certain sources had taken down the information themselves to avoid legal trouble. But then, something impossible happened. Personal accounts of independent researchers investigating the event were wiped clean. Not just social media bans. Entire accounts, emails, cloud storage, even personal backups had been deleted without explanation. For some, this was the final proof that something powerful was working behind the scenes. And then, a new discovery turned everything upside down. The secret documents were never meant to be seen. In a desperate attempt to recover what had been erased, tech-savvy researchers dug through archived government records, private data leaks, and even hidden metadata from deleted web pages. What they found was beyond anything they had expected. Buried deep within an obscure government database, hidden under an unrelated policy update, was a reference to something called Strategic Influence Operations Cultural Media Initiative SICMI. The description was brief, but the wording was eerily familiar. It spoke of media figures being selected to participate in cultural evolution strategies. It mentioned a multi-phase adaptation program. And, most disturbingly, it referred to something known as influence architects, key individuals responsible for shaping the psychological direction of public entertainment. This wasn't just about music or culture. This was about programming perception. Was Travis Scott unknowingly, or knowingly, becoming an influence architect? And more importantly, how many others had already been chosen? Then, as if confirming the worst suspicions, a classified memo surfaced from within a private security network. It was encrypted, difficult to decode. But once broken down, one phrase stood out. Phase 2 will transition from passive integration to active implementation. Active implementation of what? Nobody could say for sure. But then, an even bigger problem arose. Someone, an individual with confirmed government connections, stepped forward anonymously with a terrifying warning. Their message was short, but it sent chills through those following the case. If you think this is about one signature, you don't understand how deep this goes. You're asking the wrong questions. You're looking at the wrong people. What did that mean? If we weren't supposed to be focused on Travis Scott, who else should we be watching? And then, just as before, the message disappeared. No trace. No explanation. No follow-up. But one thing was now undeniable. This wasn't just about one musician. This was global. And Phase 2 was about to begin. The warnings weren't stopping. The deeper people looked, the more the story seemed to shift into something far bigger than a single moment inside the White House. What had started as a simple document signing had turned into a systematic erasure of information, unexplained disappearances, and leaked government terms that no one could fully explain. And then, something happened that no one expected. Travis Scott was seen again. Not in a concert, not in a public event, but in a private meeting, inside a heavily secured facility, surrounded by high-level government officials and corporate executives. A single blurry image surfaced online, showing him in a room with 3 other well-known figures from the entertainment and tech industries. Their faces were partially obscured, but the silhouettes were unmistakable. What were they doing there? Why was a music artist sitting at the table with policymakers and intelligence professionals? The internet exploded with theories. Some believed Scott had been forced into something he didn't understand, that he had unknowingly signed a document that committed him to something much bigger than he realized. Others believed he was playing an active role, that he had been selected long before the White House event ever happened. But one theory stood out from the rest. Someone with inside knowledge claimed that the meeting wasn't a discussion, it was an initiation. A private, closed-door event where select figures were introduced to the next phase of the initiative. If that was true, it meant that Travis Scott wasn't just a part of it now. He was in deeper than anyone thought. Then, the next disappearance happened. A journalist who had been closely following the story, a well-known figure with connections inside the music industry, suddenly vanished. Her last post before going silent was only 3 words long. "They told me." And just like that, her social media accounts were gone. Her website redirected to an error page. Colleagues who reached out received no response. At first, it seemed like paranoia. But then another person disappeared. And another. And another. It wasn't just information being erased anymore. It was people. The realization set in fast. This was no longer just a mystery. It was a warning. And yet, there was still one question left unanswered. Why Travis Scott? Why now? And if this was really just the beginning, what exactly was coming next? The disappearances weren't random. Every person who had been digging into the truth, journalists, independent researchers, even anonymous forum users, was either silenced or vanished completely. It was happening so methodically that it no longer felt like a coincidence. People started watching their own digital footprints, afraid to even mention Travis Scott's White House visit online. Discussions that had once been open and chaotic turned into private, encrypted conversations, shared only in the darkest corners of the internet. And then, out of nowhere, the strangest thing happened. Travis Scott reappeared. Not in a public event, not in an interview, but in a government-affiliated promotional video. The video, which was released without any prior announcement, was part of a new cultural initiative focused on global artistic collaboration and influence. It was presented as a harmless campaign, a way to empower artists and shape the next era of creative expression. But something felt off. Scott was not acting like himself. His tone was controlled. His wording felt scripted. The usual energy, the intensity, the rebelliousness that defined his brand, it was all gone. And then, people noticed something even more unsettling. The symbolism in the background. In several frames of the video, barely noticeable at first glance, were geometric patterns, designs that matched the mysterious markings that had been leaked in connection with the Cultural Reform Initiative. Someone enhanced the images, comparing them to previous leaked documents. The results were chilling. These symbols weren't random. They were part of a larger network, a language of control. And Travis Scott wasn't just endorsing it, he was now the face of it. People began to wonder, was he doing this willingly? Had the document he signed inside the White House been just a contract? Or had it been something else entirely? Was he still making his own choices? Or had he been changed? The questions started piling up, but there was no time to find answers. Because exactly 24 hours after the video went live, an even bigger bombshell dropped. A new list of names was leaked online. A list of artists, actors, musicians, and tech leaders who had reportedly signed onto the next phase of the initiative. Some names were expected. Others were shocking. And then, at the very bottom of the list, 3 words that changed everything. Phase 3 confirmed. The world wasn't ready for what came next. No one knew what Phase 3 meant. The leaked list of names was already causing panic. Some of the most recognizable figures in entertainment, music, and technology were on it. But Phase 3? It was mentioned nowhere in official documents. Even the most dedicated investigators, the ones who had risked everything to expose the truth, had never seen a reference to it before. And then, the disappearances escalated. Not just journalists. Not just anonymous insiders. Fans. Ordinary people. Those who had been actively spreading the leaks, analyzing the documents, piecing together the connections, were suddenly going silent. Users who had posted about the leaks vanished from social media overnight. Discord servers discussing the topic were wiped without explanation. Even private group chats had members removed without warning. Someone, or something, was watching. And then, for the first time since the original White House event, Travis Scott finally spoke. A single, cryptic post appeared on his account. Nothing happens overnight. No context. No follow-up. Just those 3 words. But it was enough. People immediately started dissecting the meaning. Was he warning his fans? Was he mocking the speculation? Or was it a confirmation that everything happening had been planned long before anyone noticed? Theories ran wild. But before anyone could settle on an answer, a final leak surfaced. This wasn't just another redacted document. It was a full transcript, a classified discussion between top executives, government officials, and private industry leaders. And what it revealed was far worse than anyone had imagined. The transcript detailed a timeline, a structured, multi-step process designed to integrate cultural influence models into every major entertainment platform. Music, film, streaming, social media, AI-generated content. Phase 1 had been selection, choosing who would be the first to sign. Phase 2 had been integration, beginning the process of shifting public perception through strategic messaging. Phase 3, implementation, a full-scale rollout. No longer just subliminal influence. No longer just testing reactions. It was time for execution, a controlled shift in what people see, hear, and believe. And according to the transcript, it was already set in motion. One sentence at the end of the document sent chills through everyone who read it. The structure is in place. The final adaptation will be seamless. They won't even question it. Everything people thought was entertainment was about to become something else. And the worst part? No one would notice. The realization was sinking in. This wasn't just a conspiracy theory anymore. It wasn't speculation, it wasn't paranoia, it was real. Travis Scott's White House visit had been the first public glimpse into something far bigger, older, and more calculated than anyone had imagined. And now, Phase 3 was happening right in front of everyone's eyes. The leaks, the disappearances, the sudden shifts in mainstream culture, it was all connected. But there was still one final question left unanswered. Who was really behind this? The documents had referred to government agencies, entertainment executives, and cultural influence specialists. But those were just the visible players. The real decision-makers? The people who had planned this years in advance. They remained completely in the shadows. Until, without warning, an anonymous source stepped forward. Not a journalist, not an insider, but someone who had been a part of it. A former high-ranking strategist who had worked directly on the early stages of the Cultural Reform Initiative. And what they revealed, it changed everything. The whistleblower didn't post a statement. They didn't go to the press. Instead, they leaked one final document, a master timeline, a step-by-step breakdown of how this entire operation had been unfolding for over a decade. And at the top of the document, a date, a specific moment in time when everything would shift. Not gradually, not subtly, instantly. Phase 3 wasn't about influence anymore. It was about control. And according to the leaked document, it was set to activate in less than 30 days. The world was about to change, and no one was ready for what came next. The countdown had begun. Everything that had happened so far, the unexpected shifts, the carefully planned moments, the sudden redirections of conversations, it was all leading toward one moment. This was no longer a theory. It wasn't speculation. It was something happening right now, unfolding in real time, just beneath the surface of everyday life. People who had followed the developments closely had already started to notice patterns. The way certain trends seemed to appear simultaneously across different platforms. The way public narratives subtly evolved. The way familiar voices in entertainment and media started promoting aligned perspectives, often in remarkably similar ways. According to the final leaked document, this wasn't accidental. The document outlined a structured approach to what was referred to as cultural adaptation, a multi-phase rollout, a process that would take place not over years, but over months. Phase 1 had been about selection, identifying the figures, the key moments, the opportunities to introduce new perspectives. Phase 2 had been about integration, gradually incorporating these ideas into the mainstream so that they felt organic, seamless, and widely accepted. Phase 3 was the final step. A shift so seamless, so carefully structured, that by the time the majority noticed it, it would have already taken place. The document used a specific phrase to describe this step. Activation point. A moment where everything that had been set in motion would reach full alignment. At this point, the new cultural narrative would no longer need deliberate reinforcement. It would simply be part of the environment, a backdrop so well established that questioning it would seem unnecessary. And according to the document, this activation point was approaching rapidly. Then, something happened that no one expected. One last message appeared, posted anonymously in a discussion forum that had been tracking these events from the beginning. It was short, just 3 words. It has begun. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the message was gone. The forum shut down. The thread was erased. Any archived versions quickly became inaccessible. But those who had seen it knew exactly what it meant. Phase 3 wasn't coming. Phase 3 was already here. And the most surprising part? No one even realized it.